like to call to order this meeting of the Architectural Review Board and City Planning Commission for the City of Elkhorn. It's February 6th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Will you rise to the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Leckie?
Here.
Hunter?
Here.
Stocko?
Here.
Boardman?
Here.
Geistlin?
Here.
Meinel? Schroeder?
Here. We've got the minutes for the January 16th, 2025 meeting. Any additions or corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. The next item, we've got a public hearing on notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Plan Commission of the City of Elkhorn on February 6, 2025 at 6 p.m. or soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard in the council chamber, city administration offices, 311 Seymour Court, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, for the purpose of hearing all interested parties, their attorneys or agents, with respect to the application submitted by Daryl Matthews, Centralia Partners LLC, for a conditional use permit to allow indoor mini warehouse storage located at 309 East Centralia Street. The property is more precisely identified by, looks like 4 different parcel numbers. Is there anyone here to speak at that public hearing? Asking again, anyone? Seeing no one, public hearing is closed and that matter has been withdrawn. So there's no action to be taken on it tonight. Is that right, Allison?
That is correct. The applicant, Daryl Matthews, just so you're aware, he purchased this property just recently. He was maybe thinking of doing some indoor rental space for different people, which would have required a conditional use permit. That was a short-term / temporary situation for him. He has since found a long-term tenant that would be utilizing that space for a use that would be a permitted use within that zoning district. So it was too late to cancel the public hearing. We wanted to hold it, but he has withdrawn the application.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Our next item is the proposed creation of a tax incremental district number 5 and the proposed boundaries of the district and the proposed project plan for the district. We're going to have a public hearing for that. So notice is hereby given that the Plan Commission of the City of Elkhorn will hold a public hearing on February 6, 2025 at 6 p.m. The meeting will be held at the Elkhorn Administration Building located at 311 Seymour Court. The hearing will be held to provide the public a reasonable opportunity to comment on the proposed creation of the tax incremental district number 5, its proposed boundaries, and its proposed project plan. Is there anyone here that would wish to be heard?
Is Newman and Associates going to speak on behalf of them first, or would you prefer the public?
No, the public hearings first.
Public hearings first?
Yep, and if you'll come up and state your name and address, and you get 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Colin Cheever, 644 Girard Street. My property backs up to this proposed development. In regards to the development itself, all other properties that back up to this match lot line for lot line. Currently, there are lots 1 through 5 that back up to what are 4 lots on Girard Street. One of my requests is that the developer match lot line for lot line on Girard Street for consistency with our lots. In regard specifically to the TID district as it is for tonight's agenda, I understand and I make no disillusions that when I bought this property about 6 years ago that this development would be happening and that very likely a TID district of some sort would be put in place. Where I disagree with the developer and with the TID district is where the developer themselves limit the purchases only to builders. So right now they're asking for taxpayer money and city money, but they restrict city individuals from being able to purchase property possibly adjacent to their own property. My understanding when speaking with Ryan at New England Development is they only specifically sell to builders, which I understand. They want to make money and they work with a builder for that purpose. But you're still asking for public money and public input to do this. My last request on County H and Voss Road. Right now, those have a speed limit going from 45 down to 30 on H, and Voss Road is 45, and then where the city part is, it goes down to 35 and then back up to 45. Given the increased likelihood of traffic coming out of this subdivision, I would request that the developer and the city work to have those speed limits reduced to 25 miles per hour all the way through Voss Road, and to have that speed limit down to 25 miles per hour well in advance of the new subdivision exiting out onto County Road H. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to be heard?
My name is Ed Davis. I live at 645 Girard Street. I'm actually across the street from it, but I've lived at this property for 30 years. I was just notified of this yesterday, so I haven't had time to really delve into what's going on. To my knowledge, it was always a farm field. I knew that it had been purchased back and forth. I did not know of any development that was going to go in there, which is fine with me, but I do have some concerns. One, where's the money going to be coming from to develop the infrastructure on that property? Is it going to be bond money? Is it the developer going to actually foot this bill? What's it going to do if there's bond money coming in or tax money that's going to be allocated to help develop this property? Is our taxes going to go up in this district? I think that's something I would like to have heard before we spoke, but I understand this is public. I also have a concern about how this subdivision is going to be entered. Because not only is the speed limit 45 to 30, but that's right on a curve. Are they going to put an access road in to take you off that curve before you have to cross that intersection? I think there's going to be a lot of traffic study that's going to have to be done to be able to get into this subdivision. Because I can see nothing but chaos and headaches in that intersection where Voss Road and H come into play. It's not a safe intersection to begin with, and now you're going to be adding traffic going into that subdivision. I'm assuming the right people are going to be looking at the infrastructure of sewer and water in this thing, because already on Girard Street we have an issue with sewer. We have backups periodically. Even though they've put that pumping station in there in that field, we still have issues with it. I think we've all had arguments with the state or the city about backups and the problems that we are having with the sewer there. So you're adding a lot of sewer to that section. I don't believe that substation is big enough. I'm not an engineer, but if we're already having problems there and you're going to add 100+ homes, to me, I think there's got to be a lot of study on before you start dictating how many homes can be in there and what's going to be able to handle it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Elaine Lundgren. I live at 644 Girard Street. My property also backs up onto the proposed development, and I would like to address the infrastructure and the flooding section. What we have on Girard Street, the corner of Girard and H, floods every spring. We've had pumping trucks out there, everything else. They've redone the sewers, whatever. My basement and my home has gotten, the last flood, 2 feet of water from a backup pump that supposedly failed, and it was an act of God, it was called. It was not the city's fault. However, I'm just one house, and several houses on our block, sometimes my side of the street, sometimes the alternate side, sometimes the next street over, Edgewater. They get flooding in their basement from backups because the infrastructure can't handle what's there. How can you even consider putting more houses, more sewers, more whatever into a property when the adjacent property has continual problems that have not been fixed. I have lived in my house for 47 and some years. And the more houses that get put in, the more my street floods, our street floods, the more my basement does. And there have been times in the last few years, my yard floods, the ditch alongside of County H comes almost up to my house with water. When my youngest son was still at home, they used to think it was fun to get like a raft from the Army surplus and float around in the water. And I said, no, don't do that because there's electrical wires and all. When they went to put in a new structure, they were going to put it flat. And I happened to talk to the people before they started. And I said, this area floods. And they looked into it. And now it's on a concrete base rather than strictly on the land. Apparently they listened to me at that time or looked into it. But I am concerned, how can you add more when you're not taking care of what you have? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to be heard? Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. How do you want to proceed with this? Adam, did you want to with this, or?
Let's see if the microphone here is working. Hopefully it's,
Can you hear me? Yep, there we go. Yeah, so before the council or the planning commission tonight, there's a proposed project plan to create a new TID district, TID number 5. I think everybody should have had that in their packet. The purpose of this development, or this TID district, is to support the development that some of the members of the audience had alluded to, which would be potentially up to 163 homes as part of a development by Newman Development. And the purpose of this TID district would be a mixed-use TID, so technically there was other...
Excuse me, could you speak a little louder because we can barely hear you here?
Well, that's about as loud as I can speak.
Turn your mic up.
So anyway, we've got in terms of, Matt, can you scroll down to the map of the boundaries of the district?
sure.
Yep. So this is the proposed boundaries of TID 5. There's a lot of considerations that went into these boundaries. It is a large area, but the reasons being that, one, in order to do a mixed-use TID, which is what this TID would be, you're capped at 35% of newly platted residential. And so that's a big limitation. The parcel that is in question that Newman's looking at is kind of that oddly shaped parcel, and it's 60 acres. So if the TID district, you can't have more than 35% residential newly platted, obviously you've got a 60-acre parcel that you're looking at. That's going to mean you're going to have to already have a couple hundred acres just to accommodate that project to start with. And then also, there's a couple of parcels adjacent to that development on the west side that Newman has indicated that they might in the future be interested in adding on, which if that's the case, then you have to factor that land in the newly platted residential calculation. And then on the far north side, Matt, I don't know if you can indicate it with your cursor, but that property in West Market Street, we've had quite a few developers come to the city the last couple of years interested in doing a project there. They haven't been able to make the numbers work, and so, it is our hope that as part of the city's efforts to provide a multitude of housing options, one being the apartments at Creekside, and two, the single-family development that Newman's looking at would be to provide another housing option, which would be more of a cluster development, high-density, single-family, owner-occupied housing on the parcel that Matt just identified on West Market Street. So that's why this TID map was created the way it was, is to try and incorporate that parcel, and that was, the council provided some feedback on that as well prior to even coming to the planning commission. So again, those were some of the factors that we had to take into consideration. Plus, as part of the rules, any wetlands in the area have to be deducted from the calculation. So that means that then you have to then make the map even bigger. And then there's also a valuation consideration. So there's a lot of things that go into figuring out how you're going to draw the boundaries. Just as a preliminary matter for people who live in those areas and houses that are already developed, this TID doesn't impact you in terms of, doesn't impact your taxes, doesn't change anything with respect to you. In a future increment, or any future value added that, the property would add does go into the TID revenues, but in terms of the actual property owner, it doesn't, impact the property owner. So in terms of the boundaries, that just kind of gives you an idea of how we created this proposed map. In terms of the project itself, as I said, they're looking at about 163 homes possibly across 6 phases. Matt, I don't know if you've got that map handy of the development.
It is by chance, or?
I think I sent that to you separately, or it was separate.
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, so this is the project that Newman has put forward, and like I said, it'd have up to 163 homes over 6 phases. They'd start on the north side and head down to the south side. The proposed TID is created in a way, and there was a question from the audience about how would the infrastructure be paid for? Well, the TID that's proposed under this project plan would be a pay-as-you-go situation. So basically, the developer is only going to get whatever incentives is only going to get whatever revenues and funding that they themselves generate. So no existing tax money from the city goes to the developer under this TID. If they don't build anything, they don't get anything. And the proposal would be that they would receive 70% of the increment that they generate. As part of that deal, then they're on the hook for all infrastructure. So they have to pay for all roads, they have to pay all water, all sewer. So that's how that would work. As I mentioned, the proposal is that they'd get 70%. And I'll defer to Ellers in a second about how they came up with, they did do a pro forma analysis to meet the but-for test as to whether or not funding and financing was really needed. And Ellers' conclusion was yes, that the developer is, according to the financials they provided, they would need financial assistance to do this development. And then just as a side note, in terms of a concern about the impact of the housing on the sewer in that area, the city does have plans in 2026 to replace the lift station that's in the Nedesheim area. So that is on the CIP, just as a side note. And do you want to talk, Joe, about the financial analysis you did about the project and whether or not the TID assistance was actually needed?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Joe Murray from Ellers, proud to be the city's financial advisor. Yes, as part of the city's review on this project and the creation of the project plan, the city hired us to do a pro forma analysis of the project. As part of that, we reviewed their cash flow from Newman as to how the cash money flowing in, flowing out, the revenues that were going to be generated, and how everything was going to be paid for. And based on our review on the data that we received, we had projected that they were not even going to break even on a net present value and an internal rate of return. It came in at 0.29%, and that's noted here in the project plan. Now, obviously, the developer is going to make some money. I believe is along the lines as one of the gentlemen mentioned during the public hearing, is they will be selling the lots for development. Newman prepares the sites. We'll be putting in the infrastructure, getting it ready to be built, and then they'll be selling the lots to other builders, and that's basically where they'll be making their money. But as far as the rate of return based on the incentives that are being proposed, it was not expected to even break even. Unfortunately, I dropped all my papers in the wind outside, so my copy of all that, I apologize for littering all over the city property. Somebody could find my report out there on that, but I believe the number was it was still going to come short about $540,000 from a cash flow standpoint. I'd be happy to talk about the rest of the project plan. Adam has covered the boundaries, I think, very effectively, and to talk about why it was as big as it was.
And just to add to that, one thing too on that West Market Street parcel, which we looked at earlier, the 14 acres on the north side of the city that we try to loop into this project. We have actually just even within the last week received a proposal to do a cluster style development on that parcel. So obviously it's very, very preliminary and tentative, and we don't know whether or not it'll actually happen, but there definitely is interest in that parcel, and doing this TID is going to make a what's perceived to be a more attainable housing option there, where you have a higher density development. It's going to make it more likely that it'll happen if, that parcel is included in the TID, and so that's why, as of now, it's included, but again, the council still has to ultimately make that decision later on in the process.
Does anyone on the planning commission have any questions? Allison, do you have anything to add, or?
I'll just add that, this TID, the creation of the TID is a big part of the Newman Development Project, but we're not specifically speaking on the approval of that development this evening. So just, for Plan Commission to understand, as well as the public that's here tonight, this does not guarantee their project. And so Newman Development will need to come back and go through a very standard round of approvals, and they will be back at our next Plan Commission meeting on March 6th, Thursday, March 6th at 6 o'clock for that first phase of approvals. That's called their GDP, or their General Development Plan. After that, they have to go through another phase of approval here because they will be doing a planned development. So the TID is a part of that approval process so that they can, hopefully get some assistance with the funding for this project, but we're not approving that project tonight.
And Allison, I'm really glad you mentioned that. I appreciate you mentioning that. Just as a side note, we are aware of the traffic concerns. Not that we're talking about that tonight, but we are aware of the potential traffic concerns off of Voss, and so there's going to be a traffic study that's going to have to be done as part of that approval process. But just generally speaking, as to why this kind of TID assistance is needed for this housing development, for anybody who lives in the city or has tried to find housing in the city knows that, the city hasn't had a newly platted residential subdivision in 20 plus years. And just the sad reality is all developers are asking for this kind of assistance. And Joe can certainly talk about, there's some communities where developers are asking for 100% of the increment that they're generating on these developments. So pretty much every developer that, Matt and I have met with, they always ask, what kind of assistance can the city give? And unless the city's willing to give that assistance, we're not going to get any new housing, at least in the foreseeable future. So, and one of the biggest demands has been single-family housing that we hear. There is interest in doing apartments from some developers because that's where they can make the money and make it work. But in terms of owner-occupied housing, single-family housing, it's just been very, very tough to find anybody. So the fact that Newman is willing to do it, they're well-known in the area, they've got the expertise. I get this is new territory for the city in the sense of having to provide financial assistance, using that tax revenue that's generated to provide an incentive to the developer to do it. But if the city doesn't do it, we're unlikely to have any new, residential housing for the foreseeable future. So, and I know the school district, I tell people this, the very first week I was here, the school district, they invited me over. I thought they were just here to like, hey, good to meet you. And Jason Tadlock just slid a stack of paper across the desk at me and said, we need more housing. So, and I know it's a big concern for the school district because they're, trying to find, because of the funding formula problem that they have. So this project not only provides new housing for, residents and the businesses in our area who need housing for their employees, but also the school district needs more kids for their funding formula. So these are all the reasons why it makes financial sense, but I completely understand it's new territory, and the houses are projected to be in the $400,000 to $450,000 range, which again I understand is a shock for anybody who hasn't looked at housing recently. The average housing price in Elkhorn is $300,000 right now, and that's just for your existing housing stock. So that tells you, obviously Elkhorn's got a lot of older housing. So if existing housing's averaging $300,000, there's a couple of condos up for sale right now in the city. They're in the 315, 320, 350 range, and that's for, condos. So this is why new housing would be, 4 to 450. So anyway, just want to give a little more context about the TID as a whole.
Thank you. Anyone else like to weigh in?
Yeah, I'd like to go on record as saying, in accordance with the 3 neighbors of mine that have objected tonight or had mentioned, I built my house on the corner of Girard and 4th Avenue in 1967. That's 58 years ago. And there was a problem with sewage starting the next year. So that's 57 years we've had a problem with basements getting flooded on Girard Street and North Edgewood. And until the city can come up with a written answer to that and correct that problem, I will not vote for anything for the Newman project or for the TIF district. The other problem is the last developer couldn't get permission from the county to go on to County Trunk H from that area, the old Nettershine Farm. And there's a representative from Newman that talked to us a month or two ago, said they haven't reached an agreement. So that means all the traffic is gonna come off of 4th and 2nd Avenue, residential area. So until that problem is corrected, like I said, that and the water, I will not vote for it.
Anyone else?
I just had a question about the very front page of the proposal where it said it was approval for tonight. So it had a listing of the dates on it, not on ours, on the report.
Yes, this evening, the Plan Commission is conducting the public hearing and would be considering forwarding a recommendation onto the City Council. City Council will be considering it at its meeting on March 3rd, I believe it is. Yeah, March 3rd, for the council would be creating it. This is simply a recommendation.
And that's for the TID, not the specifics of the project itself, so.
Correct.
Are we looking, is our next step looking for a motion to either approve or not approve this?
Your action would be approving the boundary, or forwarding a recommendation to approve the boundary and the project plan. That's, you've reviewed.
So we'd be approving the resolution to create the TID district?
Correct.
Recommending approval. Well, sending it to council.
Correct.
Recommending approval.
I recommend approval to send it to city council.
I'll second that. We've got a motion and a second to approve this and move it on to the council. Any other discussion? Questions? Why don't we take a roll call vote?
Whitby,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Stocko,
Yes.
Boardman,
No.
Geestlin,
Yes.
Schroeder.
Yes. Motion passes. Our next item of business is the proposed adoption of an official map of the city of Elkhorn under Wisconsin State Statute 62.236. We've got an ordinance for that too. There is a change in the draft of the ordinance. We've got, would go to the city council on February 17th. That meeting's actually on the 19th because of the election, so that's just a minor change of a date. But keep that in mind when we're discussing it.
So for any of you who I don't think I've met, I'm one of the attorneys from the city. So the official map that's in front of you, it looks like a lot of words, it looks relatively complicated, but it's actually a pretty straightforward concept. Basically what it is, it's a planning document that the purpose of which is to make it, frankly, less expensive for communities to build future roads. And the way it accomplishes that is that by allowing you to create a map showing where your future roads are intended to go, anytime after that right of way is shown on the official wants to pull a building permit to construct a building in that area, they can't do it unless the city specifically says that they can. So the effect of that then is that when it comes time to take the property, you still have to take it, you still got to purchase the land itself. It's not a dedication in that sense. The city would still have to buy the land for the road when the time comes. But by keeping structures, garages, houses from being located in that area, you're minimizing the cost that you'll ultimately have to pay. You want it to disrupt people, you want to dislocate them from their houses. It's like I said, it's a planning document. Procedurally, it's really a two-step process. So the first step is to adopt an official map that shows what you currently have. And that's kind of where we're at tonight. So the official map that you have now just reflects all the streets and infrastructure basically in the city that exists. The next step in the process that we'll be taking up in the next 2 or 3 weeks will be actually where we add areas to the plan that right away that we plan on extending in the foreseeable future. That's within the city and then also within what they call the extraterritorial platting area that all cities and villages have, which is a boundary outside of that area. So any future roads that you have in that area can also be shown. And then again, once that area shows up, whether it's in the property owner in the city already or a property owner outside the city in one of the boundary areas, if they would want to hold a building permit to build a permit, they have to come to the city and get their permission to do that. If the city doesn't give permission to do that, then again, if they're outside of the city, they can still build the building. But if it comes to be torn down, then the city is not going to pay for it, so they're going to lose their structure.
I do have a question for you on this. So when you say foreseeable future, is there going to be like a time on there, like a 10-year, 20-year out, or are you just?
Well, it's got to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. So it's whatever sort of planning frame your comp plan is up to, and I'm not sure what you guys are currently up to.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna have to update it in 2026, so I'm right around the corner, yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually beneficial to a certain extent, because then we'll make sure that the official map reflects kind of what plan is contemplated for the city.
How does that, when you're talking about extraterritorial, we don't have an agreement with Sugar Creek Township.
Right, that's actually, so it gets confusing. So there's extraterritorial plat authority and extraterritorial zoning. And I know you don't have an agreement on the zoning side, but extraterritorial plat authority is default by statute. So unless the city waived it, Elkhorn's not waived it. Basically what this is any plats that are recorded in that area would have to come through the city for approval. And that's kind of why the official mapping is tied to the platting. Both are really focused on infrastructural issues that would come up. So if you're doing a plat, you're going to have roads going through there, any waterways, that type of thing. So it's not a zoning function, even though it's actually, technically it's the same area that overlaps with extraterritorial plat authority. But the official map is just concerned with the platting authority, not the zoning piece of it. So the fact that you don't have extraterritorial zoning is kind of essentially it's an arrangement that's got to be agreed to both by the city or the village or the township. So that's not directly.
So would it make more sense to wait until we do the redistrict or the newest map in 26? Wouldn't that give us a better idea as to what we were talking about, that 20 years from now, whatever the number is?
Yeah. I mean, so you do already have, well, again, so the first step here is just reporting what you've already got. But the next step, even in your current comp plan, you do already have some roadway extensions that are contemplated. So it would make sense, from my perspective, it would make sense to get those on the official map as soon as you can. Because again, the concern is some builds in that area, when it comes time to go that road through, now you gotta pay that, you got somebody's house, you gotta relocate them, you gotta pay that. And it's awfully expensive. It's not a cheap process necessarily anyhow, but if you're just buying empty land, that's one thing. If you actually got to take a house down and pay for relocation benefits.
I guess the question I'm asking is, you want us to approve a map we've already approved?
No, so the first step is just the map is just reflecting what you guys already have for streets that already exist.
So what we've already approved?
We don't have a map right now, and that's the problem. So we don't have an official map at all. Most communities do. It's kind of a standard of practice in the zoning world. So if you go to other communities, they probably have an official map. This is more of a cleanup situation. For the city of Elkhorn, we realized we don't have an official map, so we're not able to use anything right now for planning purposes. So as Attorney Geary mentioned, the first step would be to just get an official map and approve it and adopt it. And then in the future, we do have a 2040 comprehensive plan right now that shows future road extensions. In a couple of weeks, we'll be adding those to this official map so that the official map is consistent with our current comp plan and it shows those future extensions. But then in 2026 or so, when we update our comprehensive plan per statute, we're required to update it every so often. When we do that, we'll bring it back, we'll take another look at the adopted official map that we have in place and have it match our new comp plan. But the first step right now in this entire process is to just get to the zoning department and a map.
Exactly, that's perfect. I mean, it's not required by state statute. Communities don't have to have official maps, but most of them do. And that's why, because it's a great planning tool. And frankly, it's beneficial not only for the city in this case, but also for the residents. So when you're planning, if you happen to own property where we're contemplating putting a road through at some place, it allows you to kind of plan what you're going to do with land as well. So you don't, build a dream house and then, whoops, guess what, we do that. So it's a beneficial tool for everybody involved, I think, and I definitely think it's a good idea to give it a place.
Is there at any point during this map thing gonna be just, you can ask we can ask questions, or is it just?
There is a public hearing that's going to be before the common council meets to take it up, which is the 19th, I think, right? Is that
Okay.
First step here?
I just had a real, because I was listening to you and I just had a quick question. I know that an ETZ map exists already.
For some certain communities, correct.
So, well, I know it's in effect for Elkhorn because we had to deal with it as builders. This is something separate than the ETZ?
It is. Okay. Yeah, it is. It will extend eventually, once it's amended, it will extend to the same boundaries essentially. ETZ zoning and extraterritorial plat zoning is the same boundary around a community.
Okay.
So it's pretty much the same area, but it's not tied to ETZ zoning.
Thanks.
So I don't mean to jump ahead here, but if, I'd like to make a motion to approve this, if that's, if we don't have any other questions. Yeah, the map, we get at least the map that we have now.
With the change of date from the
Yes.
17th to the 19th.
Yes.
We've got a motion to approve the ordinance and a second. Any further? Jason? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ordinance passes. Any general discussion items?
I don't really have anything other than that we will be having a meeting February 20th and we will also be having a meeting March 6th. The official map is going to be coming back February 20th. March 6th, we'll have Newman Development back for their general development plan, so staff is actively working on reviewing their submittal for that. I don't have anything else.
Thank you.
Date for February 20th, I think we're talking about possibly shifting that because of the council approval of the official map, so that may change a little bit. Might be shifted to March 6th.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Would we still have a meeting on February 20th then?
If it's shifted, then we would not.
Well, I think we have, so our council meeting's on the 19th. Would we be able to turn that around or not?
That's the reason why we think it makes sense to delay it, because it's gonna seem kind of, honestly, silly to have council approve a map on Wednesday and then the planning commission discuss amending it the next day, so.
And actually, even before the meeting, there had been some conversation about maybe there would be traditionally, it sounds like the planning commission is conducting your public hearings on things, right? State statute with respect to official maps makes clear it's gotta be the common council itself that does the public hearing, but there was some talk that maybe there'd be a benefit to, once we get to the amendment stage, having a joint meeting between the planning commission and the common council, so they can receive the benefit of any comments that people have. I'm not sure from a scheduling standpoint if that's viable or not. This would be the second stage of it, which would be the
it might make more sense if you want to include a public hearing, just to have a public hearing before the planning commission as part of the regular meeting, because you can completely have one voluntarily if you want,
Yeah.
as opposed to try and coordinate a joint meeting, which now you try to schedule, find a time that works for everybody.
And it wouldn't, since it's technically an optional public hearing, we wouldn't have to do a class 2 notice even, we could just let people know, put it on the website, and then go that way, that's an option as well.
So what I'm hearing is no meeting on February 20th, and we'll keep you updated on an official meeting date to bring the official map back.
All right, thank you. So everybody get that, no meeting on the 20th of February? And we'll keep you posted on the rest of it. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.